I'd like to remind you all that this is a volunteer-based movement of working people. So we have a learn, teach, serve model. Everyone contributes what they can when they can. And we make everything possible by the actions of the volunteers here. Nothing's bought and paid for. It's all by the work of our own hands. So thank you so much for great. Thank you. So please welcome Dr. Shiva. And thank you for everyone for joining us. Here he comes. Hello, welcome, Dr. Shiva.
All right, everyone, good evening. It's Dr. Shiva Iyer. I'm sorry, I've been a little bit delayed, but let's start. We're also sharing this on all of social media, and we're going to do an in-depth, very deep educational discussion so all of you understand or review what I shared with you many, many years ago on what is mRNA technology and why the swarm, Trump, who's a fucking moron, doesn't understand any of this technology, but he does understand a lot of greenbacks, which is what he's getting from Silicon Valley. Put Larry Ellison, who's a Mossad CIA agent, aka the CEO, founder, president of Oracle, gave him the platform to announce that the United States government, in collusion with Silicon Valley, is going to be putting out about $500 billion into deploying mRNA technology that's AI powered for quote unquote personalized medicine, a term that I was the first really to share broadly with people back in 2020, if you remember all those videos, going back a long time. So I think it's important that we educate everyone, not in the griftosphere of manipulation, but really to educate people. And to those of you joining us, welcome. And our movement is about enabling people who want to save themselves, not everyone who just wants to sort of hop around and whine and not do anything about it. But if you want to save yourself, you've come to the right place, because the organization, the institution, the community that we have built, the connections that you can make here will keep you on the right track, not on a track of ignorance, not on a track of being manipulated, but also on a righteous track of making sure you get off your butt. Particularly we want to encourage working people, which is what our movement is led by, people who work for a living, people who have work, retirees, mothers, fathers. We don't really encourage people who are living in their parents' basement, not doing anything, to be involved leading our movement. They can help out, and many of them don't even want to help out because they know we will make them do work. But our movement really is about working people. It's the only movement of its kind: truth, freedom, health. So when you come to our movement, we have a process. It is not for people who want to be dilettantes, undisciplined, and think they know it all, because you will not find this knowledge anywhere else. We teach you, first of all, what is the swarm. Go to shattertheswarm.com. Then the next education process begins if you want to go down a path of learning how to fight. Then you go see a series of videos that we've curated called Get Off the Plantation. And then we encourage you to become a warrior scholar. We have local groups, local leaders who will guide you, support you, local communities. And then you can go into a path of many different solutions to become a leader in this movement, to help deploy clean food solutions in your local communities, to bring true personalized medicines that come from understanding epigenetics and natural compounds, how they work, not the fake personal medicine that, again, these guys have been watching a lot of our videos. So they always take where we're headed and they create the not so obvious establishment version of it, which is what Larry Ellison and Trump are doing right now. And mind you, they watch every video that I do, they cut and copy and paste, and then they manipulate it to make sure that you stay ignorant, actually. And then the other thing we have is we have the entire systems health education program, health education. So we have solutions. We will expose the swarm relentlessly, but we will educate those who want to truly get educated with the depth of knowledge that you cannot get anywhere else on the planet. So today we're going to do that with you. You're going to learn what is mRNA technology. Now, I did a hand-drawn video many years ago. You guys can find it, but I'm going to review that with you. And then we're going to talk about what the swarm is really up to. the Zionist mRNA AI powered swarm. Okay. But before I go there, I want to play for you guys a recent clip of a video where Trump let Larry Ellison discuss this. So let me bring this up. I think I have it here. Let me bring it up here. So I'm going to bring up this short video, which will share with you what the announcement that was made.
Once we gene sequence.
Let me bring this up. But most people probably have no idea what the hell this guy said, including Trump, obviously. Okay. So let me bring this up here and we'll go through this. Okay. So let me, so I want you to listen to this carefully so you understand what was put out there. And most people have no idea what Larry Ellison actually said. Okay. I do have to share sound here so you guys can hear the sound on this platform. By the way, all of you are joining us on social media. If you signed up for our town halls, you would actually have the opportunity to ask questions directly and participate in our community and get connected. So we encourage you to do that. Suresh, if you can put out there how they can do that, theyeshiva.com/orientation. So let me begin with this, okay? So here is the announcement that was made by Trump using his mouthpiece, Larry Ellison. So let's bring this up here, okay?
Once we gene sequence that cancer tumor, you can then vaccinate the person.
Let me start it from the beginning.
Once we gene sequence that cancer tumor, you can then vaccinate the person, design a vaccine for every individual person to vaccinate them against that cancer. And you can make that vaccine, that mRNA vaccine, you can make that robotically, again, using AI in about 48 hours. So imagine early cancer detection, the development of a cancer vaccine for your particular cancer aimed at you, and have that vaccine available in 48 hours. This is the promise of AI and the promise of the future. Once we gene sequence that cancer tumor, you can then vaccinate the person, design a vaccine for every individual person to vaccinate them against that cancer. And you can make that vaccine, that mRNA vaccine, you can make that robotically, again, using AI in about 48 hours. So imagine early cancer detection, the development of a cancer vaccine for your particular cancer aimed at you, and have that vaccine available in 48 hours. This is the promise of AI and the promise of the future. Once we gene sequence.
Okay, so I wanted you guys to all hear that. So that was this, if you saw it, if you heard that announcement, that's what was made. And Larry Ellison, this is personalized medicine. Many of you know that my PhD at MIT, graduating in 2007, I was one of the first graduates of a new department called biological engineering, where I created Cytosolve, was in personalized. Cytosolve for big pharma, but rather to use it for enabling us to understand combination therapies of medicines from natural compounds occurring in nature. Okay?
We lost you for a few seconds, Raj.
You there,
Yeah.
Suresh? Or you can't hear me?
Yeah, we lost you for like 5-6 seconds.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. So what I shared was someone said that my PhD work was at MIT, was building a technology platform that had allowed us to understand the complexity of molecular mechanisms in the body, and then look at the combinations of natural compounds that exist in nature from foods, natural compounds, figure out how they can interact to elicit favorable biochemical reactions for you. Okay. That's a promise of Cytosolve. Now, I could have used that technology to do to help big pharma. In fact, in 2012, I used CytoSolve as a way to prove that I could do better than Big Pharma. In less than 11 months, I discovered a multi-combination therapy for pancreatic cancer. And to prove that I discovered it, we actually got it allowed by the FDA, which normally takes 3 years, a lot of paperwork. We did it as a proof of concept. And then we went to MD Anderson and we did follow-up research with them. It's quite profound, but I wanted to use, so we proved we could play with the big boys, but I was more interested in looking at natural compounds. Why? Why do I want to do that? Because I have great respect for the human body and understand it's a very complex system. And we have co-evolved with nature. There are already incredible solutions in nature which support our genetics and epigenetics. Okay, so this is a broad philosophical framework, and I'll probably do many, many more videos on this. But understand, so that was 2007. And then I took some time off, went back to India in 2009 to 10 or 8 to 10. And I started wanting to re-understand, even though I'd studied it on my own, ancient systems of Indian medicine, traditional medicines, and how we could integrate those into modern systems biology. That resulted in Systems Health. Tomorrow morning, starting at 7 a.m. until probably 7 p.m. for 3 days, I'll be teaching a set of courses. You all are encouraged to become Systems Health educators. But after coming back, that course was taught at MIT, and then I took CytoSolve as a company to develop new medicines. And in 2017, 18, CytoSolve was honored as a leading innovation solution by one of the leading societies for medicine. We won their, keynote award at that year. So I played with the swarm and I've defeated them and we've excelled with them. But I chose not to give this technology to them, but to develop it for us, we the people. Okay, so that's the background. So in 2019, I was asked by the National Science Foundation, they choose one researcher a year to give a prestige lecture on the immune system. This was right before COVID hit. And I gave a talk saying the future of medicine is to recognize that one size does not fit all. That's why giving one broad-based vaccine to everyone didn't make any sense. Now, this is 2019. That same year, I was the one who was leading protests against the vaccine mandates. This is before COVID in New Jersey. And when Booby Kennedy was trying to strike backroom deals to fuck up our demonstrations. So this is a context. You're looking at someone who by all accord should be at MIT sitting there working with Big Pharma, but I'm here building a movement because I never forgot where I came from. So you will not find scientists like myself from the establishment taking time to educate all of you on how all of this shit works. And it's time all of you understand that you actually have nobody from there helping you. We have to help ourselves. So this conversation, this knowledge I'm going to share with you is going to be a deep discussion. I don't like doing short fucking 2-minute videos and getting TikTok shares and likes. So you're going to have to take some notes and listen. Okay? This is not going to be a soundbite. So let's start. So what is mRNA technology? What is mRNA? So let's start there. Then we're going to discuss the notion of mRNA vaccines. What is a vaccine and how they're using this term in a new way. Then we're going to discuss how these mRNA vaccines for cancer and the serious and lethal side effects that they have are absolutely unknown because we don't even know what the genome is. So let's start there, some basic biology. You're sitting there right now listening to this. You have about 10 trillion cells in your body, varies the numbers what they count. You have close to 380 trillion bacteria and virome in your body, which means bacteria and viruses, and it's called the microbiome and the virome. So we're a walking jungle. For every cell, you have an order of magnitude of more other material, which is not even you, okay? And these species which are in you and on you have co-evolved with us. And we're only starting to understand the virome and the microbiome. You have them in your gut, you have them everywhere throughout your entire body. So I'm giving you broad strokes here. Your genome, every cell in your body, you have about 300 different cell types, 300 different cell types, 12 different major organs, about 20,000 protein coding genes. You have 46 chromosomes, and we're going to go through what all this means. And the interactions which you have with everything around you is what makes you who you are at a certain point in time. So, in the 1950s, a number of people, in fact, a woman who actually discovered DNA did not get credit for it. Okay, she's Rosalind, forget her last name, is the one who actually did the research. That she's the one who actually saw the confirmation. Watson and Crick got credit, but you may see this picture of a helix, right? It looks like a ladder that goes. So the structure of DNA was uncovered. DNA means deoxyribonucleic acid, DNA. And why do they call it deoxyribonucleic acid? Because it's imagine a ladder with all the rungs and two foundational elements of it that hold it up. Now, this is just twisted, okay? It's the spiral. Those ladders on the DNA are what are called nucleotides, and each slat of the ladder has the mirror image of each of those nucleotides, okay? But anyway, the reality, strings of those ladder rungs, a block of them, and it can vary, is known as a gene, okay? In the biology prior to 2003, they had the concept of the central dogma theory. Central dogma theory, that's what it was called. So if you look at any cell in your body, what is a cell composed of? An outer layer known as a cell membrane. And it's, by the way, it's three-dimensional. It's not flat, right? You always see these cells flat. It's three-dimensional. The cell has its own skeleton, believe it or not. It's called the cytoskeleton. In my early part of my PhD, I spent quite a bit of time understanding the mechanical structure of the cytoskeleton. And inside of this sphere is fluid, the cytoplasm, and it's got all different types of organelles, in there. And one of the organelles is known as a nucleus. Now, in typical biology diagrams, they put the nucleus right in the center. And right, so you had the cell, if you look at pictures, and this thing called the nucleus. And inside the nucleus, they would say, oh, you got a bunch of chromosomes in there, 46 chromosomes. And they're paired chromosomes, okay? So these chromosomes look like an X. There is a Y chromosome, which men have. But these chromosomes, if you were to zoom into them, they have this DNA structure, okay, which is this long helix. And after the discovery of DNA, starting in the late 80s and 90s, because of the central dogma theory, and you're going to understand what that is, which basically said a disease, or every feature that you have in your body, blue eyes, red hair, whatever you have, right? Long hands, all of those particular features were related to a particular sequence of nucleotides, e.g. a gene. So the definition of a gene was a part of the DNA, among all those chromosomes, a piece of the DNA, which is attributable to a particular phenotype. Genotype, which is UC. So if you have very long eyelashes, that's because this part of the DNA gave you eyelashes. This part of the DNA for that same person gave them smaller eyelashes, okay? So this was known as a central dogma theory. So how did the central dogma theory work? What said inside the cell is a nucleus, and it has these chromosomes. And from time to time, the chromosomes, the two rungs of the ladder will open up, and one side, a block of that DNA will unravel, replicate the mirror image, and leave the nucleus. Now, this piece so you have a piece of half a rung of a ladder with, these different sequences. It was called messenger RNA, mRNA, messenger RNA, ribonucleic acid, not deoxyribonucleic acid, which is 2 rungs, okay? A single rung of the ladder. And this would leave, the messenger RNA would leave the nucleus and go into the cytoplasm and would go to an organelle called the ribosome. And so if you can visualize this, the ribosome, think about it like a printing press. And input to the ribosome is a blueprint of sequences of these nucleotides, which represent a piece of the genome, the entire DNA. But that piece of each of those nucleotides are instructions to code for a particular protein. So this piece of the half rung of the ladder goes to the ribosome, it goes through it, and out pops a protein. Sequences of protein sequences denoted by those nucleotide sequences. Okay, and you can look this up online. Or look at the video I did almost 5-6 years ago now. So what happens is little pieces of mRNA using the ribosome engine will code for a protein. What is a protein? Everyone says eat protein, eat protein. Well, what the fuck's a protein? If you looked at protein, protein is made up of chains of amino acids. Okay? So as that mRNA is going through the ribosome, it is coding for pieces of amino acids that get linked together to form peptides, and long pieces of peptides form protein. So anyway, so if you have blue eyes, you have a different protein than the guy who's got brown eyes. Okay? So this genetic factory that I just went through codes for that protein. Proteins then interact with other proteins. Gets even more complicated. Protein A interacts with protein B, and C, and D, and F. And this protein interaction is known as molecular pathways. Okay. All right. So anyway, and those molecular pathways are machinery that can do other functions. Like, for example, make sure your DNA, when it replicates, doesn't make errors. So that protein machinery does that. Make sure that you have energy, right? These are machines. Systems of systems of systems. So anyway, in 1990s, they decided they had the central dogma theory, which was this notion that all disease can be solved if we find the right genes which cause that disease. This disease is caused by this gene, okay? So just think about that. This was a theory that biologists had. We, as in Truth Freedom Health, we teach you engineering system science. We would not have had a theory, but biologists are reductionist. And that's what I used in the title of this talk, reductionism. What is reductionism? You don't look at the whole picture. You look at the little pieces here and here and here. It is a famous story of the blind men who were invited. 6 blind men were invited by a king, and an elephant is brought in, and the blind men touch different parts of the elephant, and each has a very different idea of what they see. The guy who touches the feet thinks it's the oak tree. The guy who touches the trunk thinks it's a snake, and so on. Okay? But this is how science has been proceeding in a reductionist way. You see a little piece here, you write a paper there, you think that's how this is caused. And this is how the media works to manipulate you through reductionism, the left and the right. Okay? Reductionism is a general phenomenon, which is not how nature works, which is how reality is. So anyway, starting in 1990s, they said, okay, we're going to go sequence the genome. We're going to look at every piece of DNA in humans, and we're going to find blocks of DNA which code for particular proteins, genes. So here's very interesting definition. Again, this is hot off the press, which you won't read anywhere. Most of the 99 or 100% of the grifters will not know what I'm talking about. They'll just cut and paste. What is the definition of a gene? Well, up until even a few months ago or a year ago, the definition of a gene was a piece of that DNA material which produced an mRNA sequence which coded for a protein. Okay, that's the definition of a gene. A gene codes for a protein. Got it. Okay. Well, so starting in 1990s, they started looking for all the genes. Now, we knew a worm only had around 20,000 genes. So in the hubris nature of these biologists, they assume, well, a little worm's got 20,000 genes. Look at how complicated we are. We must have at least 1 million genes, meaning that complexity of an organism was directly related to the number of genes. Let me repeat that again. Complexity of a system, an organism, was related to the number of its parts, the number of its genes. Okay? Is that true? Is that true? If I gave you 10 marbles and some string, and I gave Bill Grooms, let's say I gave Doris 10 marbles and a string, and I gave Bill Grooms 100 marbles and some string, is Doris going to create a simpler structure system than Bill? That's what people thought. Oh, Bill's got 100 marbles and a bunch of string. Therefore, he will definitely always create a much more complex structure. Well, Bill could just take those 100 marbles and line them up like this, one string after another, very simple structure. Doris could take her 10 marbles and connect them all together, making a very complex three-dimensional structure. You guys see what I'm saying? Complexity is not a function of the number of parts. It's about the interconnections. So what happens? They spend 10 years sequencing the genome, and lo and behold, in 2003, they only find 20,000 protein coding genes in the human body, the same as a worm. Let that sink in. We have the same number of parts, protein coding genes, as a worm. So now these non-systems based reductionist biologists are saying, what the fuck? That's what they did say. They were sitting there on a bunch of table and they said, what the fuck? We got it all wrong. We spent billions of dollars and we only found 20,000 genes. And this was when a revolution in biology took place. And this is when I was very incidental. I was walking back to MIT to visit one of my own advisors, and he said, look, you should come back to MIT because, you know, you created email, you love technology, you've always loved medicine. Biology is at a very important point that they realize that we are not our genes. And we need to look at all those pathways. It's a much larger system. And imagine if we could understand those mechanisms of action, then we could really understand what's going on in the body. Not just this gene creates this protein, therefore do something to this gene or affect this and boom, you can solve disease. That's what fucking Donald Trump just put that fool mRNA idiot, Larry Ellison, to say, who, by the way, is a Mossad CIA agent. Larry Ellison, the founder of Oracle, is one of the biggest funders for Israel. Okay, so here's a guy sitting up there that Trump gives a podium to with the president thing, telling all the world that the United States government in collusion with Silicon Valley now is going to spend another close to $500 billion to inject you with mRNA technology based on manipulating the infrastructure in your body to elicit a response, and voila, that's going to solve disease. Okay? All right. So let's go back to basics here. So now we know in 2003 that something's really wrong. We have 20,000 genes. A worm has 20,000 genes. How come we build civilizations and a worm, maybe he's building his own little civilization in the dirt, but we built all this and a worm's there. So nothing added up. So that's when people realize, holy shit, something else is going on. We're not our genes. that the genes actually give rise to proteins, but these proteins may interact. That's a whole nother set of interactions. And the protein-protein interactions may actually feed back into the genome and turn off genes. So you have a much more complex feedback cycle. Recently, Gerald Fink, I think he's a professor at MIT, I took his classes many years ago, said, you know what? And he played the theme from Star Trek, and he goes, we must go boldly where no man has gone before, no person has gone before. We don't know shit about DNA because the genes that we're talking about are only less than 5% of the entire genome. What's the rest of the 95%? So now the new definition of a gene, and most biologists don't even know this, is a piece of the genome that codes for a ribonucleic acid. And I'll do a whole video on this, but just right, it's not just for protein coding genes, because now we have found various types of RNAs, silencing RNAs, whole bunch of RNAs. And we don't even know how all this shit works. We're like in the tip of knowledge, understanding. We're like in a whole new world. But messenger RNA is the piece of the genome that codes for a protein, okay? That's what these guys are talking about. All right, so this is the background. So messenger RNA is a piece of DNA which can leave the nucleus and can code for a protein, which is part of the molecular machinery. Now, the biggest thing that came out of 2003 is we're not our genes. Most importantly, we can turn off genes and turn on genes. They have found twins, exact same genome, exact same replica genome. One gets a blue eye and the other doesn't get a blue eye. The central dogma theory said both people should get blue eyes. Well, how did that happen? They have found animals that should be coding, that have genes that should make them their behavior like this. But when you take the mouse baby from one group and put it to another group, and by the way, I'm not gonna, you guys should go to Systems Health and learn all this. You're getting a lot of knowledge here, but if you want to really learn it, there's a whole course I have on this. But they found that the mouse from one group, which is supposed to have a behavior genetically, doesn't have that behavior when it's nursed by a mother with a different behavior pattern. So that means environment, food, thoughts affect our genes. So it's not a one-way central dogma theory. It's much more complicated. So we're talking about a very complex system. And this kind of complexity can only be understood by engineers. So this is why in 2003, MIT created a huge department, a new department, which never existed on the planet, called biological engineering, not biomedical. And I was one of the first graduates, probably the first set of graduates out of that department. The idea was use principles of biology to figure out how to engineer new things, right? That's where cytosol came from. So anyway, now you have a background on what is mRNA, what is a true definition of a gene, which is anything that codes for pieces of ribonucleic acid. The old definition, which is what 99% of YouTube will talk about, is a piece of the genome coding for protein coding gene. All right, so you got that background. And by the way, you can go look at my videos where I share the details of this, some drawings I've done. So now fast forward to the concept of vaccination. What is vaccination? Well, vaccination was an attempt to imitate how the body responded to exogenous antigens coming into your body to have an immune response. What do I mean by that? What is an antigen? An antigen is a piece of protein, some set of amino acids. It could be on fungus, it could be on my nose, it could be on, if I sneeze on you, it could be on a virus, it could be on anything, right? It's a piece of protein. It could be on allergens, mold, anything. And when your body gets exposed to these antigens, which are coming from these sources, your body has a whole mechanism. And you can go see the videos I've done on the modern immune system, which I educated hundreds of millions of people on during COVID so they could know how to support their immune system. But when your body senses an antigen, it has a mechanism to say, is it okay or not And if it's not okay, it elicits an initial immune response, a secondary immune response, a tertiary immune response. Very complicated. That was what I had uncovered in the modern theory of the immune system. It's not just a simple model. And this simple model was the basis of creating vaccinations. So, in the old days, if someone got measles, you had a measles party or a chickenpox party, and everyone shared their antigens and they had an immune response. It was a form of quote unquote vaccination. In traditional times, if one animal got sick, they would expose the sputum of that animal to another animal. So not every animal was sick all the time, different times, so you could still do farming, right? This was a technique people learned, quote unquote, vaccination. The African slave brought the concept of variolation, which was a technique of, scraping your skin and putting, the exogenous, let's say smallpox sputum on it. So your body had a response. In fact, it was because of that African slave who brought it to the United States that Washington used that technique to inoculate the troops in the Revolutionary War. Okay. So this concept of exposing yourself to an antigen and eliciting an immune response has been around for forever. That's why it's good to let your kids play in dirt. The kid gets exposed, he gets an immune response. All right. Well, as we moved into quote unquote modern civilization and kids weren't getting exposed, we're staying at home, being coddled by their parents, everything done for them. Kids weren't being exposed. Their immune response wasn't being activated. So people said, how do we do this artificially? So they created vaccines to emulate that process where you'd introduce some antigen, deliver it through some mechanism, so the body would get this immune response. And then you get into the very interesting complexities of, is it effective, side effects, etc. Okay? But get it clear, the idea was an antigen, a protein or whatever it was, would have your body have this immune response. Okay? So what happened during COVID? A company called Moderna, which was founded by a former advisor of mine, Bob Langer, who actually wrote a recommendation letter for me, which led me to win the undergraduate research award in 1984. So at that time in 1983, when I was an undergraduate, I was looking at how to understand the dynamics of nanolipid particles. What is a lipid? A globule of fat in a sphere, and you could put medicine in it. And we were looking at putting heparin, which is a blood thinning drug, in that, so you could deliver it to people, so you didn't have side effects. Anyway, I was looking at the engineering dynamics of these particles, and Bob was doing that back in 1983. So what they did with Moderna and BioNTech and these companies was they created the mRNA platform. What is the mRNA platform? Okay, so you look at the quote unquote the virus. The surface of that virus has antigens on it that they call the spike protein, a protein. Remember, protein is the end product in the body created by mRNA, right? Genome has an mRNA blueprint. It goes to the ribosome. The ribosome creates a protein. That's all you need to know for now, okay? So what they said was, okay, we want to inoculate people so they don't get, so their body elicits this immune response. So how were they going to do that? Well, typically, if I had COVID, I'd sneeze on you, you'd get COVID, okay? And then your body inoculated it. So what they decided was, that could be too slow. So they said, we're going to take that protein, the spike protein, and we're going to create the genomic sequence, the mRNA that would code for that protein. So reverse engineering. So here's the spike protein. I'm going to now create the instructions of mRNA that if I put it, the software program, to a ribosome, it would make that protein. Everyone following me? Okay. So the goal was you would take a lipid particle, a nanoparticle. Inside of it, you would put the blueprint, the mRNA, the half ladder. And you would put trillions of these particles, okay? trillions. And in one injection, you would deliver trillions of these nanoparticles, which would get taken into your cells of your body. And those, so one cell has this nanoparticle piercing through it, the fat module dissipates, and now you have a piece of mRNA in the cytoplasm. The mRNA does what it does. It goes to a ribosome, as I talked about before. And guess what that mRNA will code for? The spike protein. Okay? So they created the blueprint that your body would think it was just mRNA coming from your own genome, and it would code for a spike protein. Now your body is being used to generate spike protein. And then what happens is your immune system, which is composed of, again, you can go watch my other video, B cells and T cells, would elicit an immune response, attack that spike protein, and create antibodies. That was a goal. The ultimate goal is to turn on your immune system so it creates the antibody so you have protection. So that's what the mRNA technology platform is. You take a lipid particle, inside of it, you put in an mRNA sequence, and that mRNA sequence is, your body thinks, oh, it's just a piece of mRNA. Your ribosomes make the protein, which has a immune response, creating antibodies or attacking the virus, right? The surface of the virus has these proteins. So your antibodies attack that, or the T cells, B cells, and they destroy the virus, fungi, etc. Okay? So that's the whole basis of mRNA technology. And if you have questions, hold them, write them down, and we'll talk about what those are. So now you understand the history of sort of the genetic piece. You understand what is mRNA, and now you understand that the fact is they are looking at proteins. They're reverse engineering to make the blueprint and using your own body to create that protein. So your immune system recognizes that a foreign agent and elicits an immune response. Okay. Now the question is this safe? The assumption here is that piece of mRNA will degrade, okay? And it'll just disappear over time, okay? The assumption here is that that spike protein, in this case, a protein that will also dissipate and break up over time. It's called the clearance rate, okay? For example, if you take ibuprofen into your body or any drug, your body over time, your liver processes it and it clears it. Just like if you ate something bad, it's not like you're sick all day long, your body clears it. So the theory is this stuff, oh, don't worry, it's just waste products that'll get cleared. Okay? It's a theory. Well, you saw people, now, when they gave this vaccine, many of the companies openly told people that one of the side effects would be myocarditis. Our movement in 2020 talked about all of this. You had these doctors, scumbag doctors, wait 2 to 3 years. When it was on the vaccine package, the companies actually told you it would create this. It's not like news. Oh my God, it was right there in front of you. So anyway, now, here's the big questions. You have a piece of mRNA DNA. We say it goes from the nucleus. It leaves the nucleus, goes to the ribosome, codes. Well, what happens to that mRNA? Can the mRNA go back into the nucleus and get reintegrated back into your own DNA and elicit other autoimmune responses we don't even know about? There's some evidence that this is coming. I just was reading a paper earlier this evening on it, okay? So the point is, understand the complexity of all of this, and to Gerald Fink's understanding of we don't even know what the fuck we're doing. It's all new. So now you have this promise that we're going to go do, so this is what, when it comes to cancer vaccines, this is what they're saying. Let's say everyone here has some tumor growing in them right now, okay? Well, the surface of that tumor as it's growing, or the tumor, will release different proteins. So maybe, God forbid, the tumor is, I don't know, somewhere in your body. And it's releasing these little proteins and they're floating around your body. What's a protein? It's a sequence of amino acids. So the theory is, okay, we're going to detect that protein. And we know that protein is not supposed to be in your body. It's in that tumor. So that protein, we're going to engineer an mRNA sequence, piece of DNA, half of the DNA, which will code for that protein. So they're actually going to create more of that cancer protein in your body. And so they're going to first of all find the tumorous protein, create a mRNA sequence for it, stick it in a nanoparticle and inject you with it. But each one of you will get many different kinds of injections because it's based on your particular tumor type. That mRNA, very much like the COVID vaccine, quote unquote vaccine, will go into your cell, into your dendritic cells. Dendritic cells are important cells because they're the ones that can elicit an immune response. So your body, so this mRNA goes into the dendritic cell. Your dendritic cell makes that tumor protein and it brings it to the immune system. An immune system elicits an immune response. It makes T cells to attack that protein. So the goal is you will turn on your own immune system to early detect that piece, and then your T cells will go attack that tumor and eat it up. That's the theory. That's a theory, okay? And in early trials, they found, some positive results, some negative results, some very positive results, and some no results. But here's the reality. What happens to that mRNA? Like I talked about, does it get reintegrated into your DNA? And what are the other things it can do? Because remember, what we show at Cytosolve is this is a feedback process. It's not the central dogma theory going one way. Larry Ellison, Donald fucking Trump, who's a moron, knows nothing, $500 billion, him and Jared Kushner, Ivanka, and everyone's thinking about how much money they're going to get from that on the back end into their super PACs, all of this. That's what they're thinking about. By the way, this was just announced within days of him getting office, which means all of this was organized by Silicon Valley, who funded him. So now they're saying they're going to build these huge data centers, AI-powered data centers, which will do all this robotic sequencing. But remember, all of this is based still on the 1950 model of the central dogma theory. Systems biology has gone way beyond that. So these guys are saying we're going to find this ability to create an mRNA, it'll create this protein, and voila, your immune system will respond, you're done. But what about the feedback mechanisms? Will that mRNA get reintegrated? Will it elicit other complex reactions? Now, Cytosolve can figure this shit out if we were funded, if we, the people, wanted to do this. But bottom line is we don't know. You don't know. And furthermore, who is deciding $500 billion should be put into this? Did you make that decision, Bill? Sam? Jewel? Did anyone here participate in this decision? Trump gets in, they're going to just do it. Where the fuck was all these decision-making made? Technologies are going to be deployed, which, by the way, were developed by public monies and are being siphoned to Silicon Valley private corporations who are going to use it on our behalf and charge us. I would argue all this technology should be free. Moreover, we the people should be making these decisions. Okay? And this has nothing to do with Biden or Trump. If we're talking about Biden and Trump and creating a dialectic, for God's sake, go study the course. You're still in kindergarten. You don't understand the fundamentals. It's not about Biden or Trump. Okay? This is about the fact that they want to use you, you, to work out all the errors. Anyone in software development will tell you when I build a piece of software, you want to get users right away, so you learn all the bugs. So you do the alpha, beta, gold. Well, in medicine, this is software biotech platforms. Is Larry Ellison going to take this first? And by the way, please, in the chat, Robin, can you stop chatting there? please hold because it's very disruptive to my conversation. Just hold. And I think that's one of the rules, Suresh, if you can tell people to wait and then we'll take interactions. Kindly do that. Appreciate that. Thank you. I appreciate your enthusiasm and your questions. But understand, I do all of my talks without any teleprompter. There are no notes. I do it based on my view of what you guys need to hear. And so it's occurring in real time. You won't have anyone else be able to talk in this way. They need teleprompters and need all this other shit. So please don't interrupt me as I'm doing it because I'm going through a stream of consciousness of what is necessary at this point. So anyway, the mRNA technology platform is using computing technology. Most of it was funded through the Defense Department using your fucking tax dollars. So we now have technologies that are coming out based on, we paid for it, it is ours, being given to Silicon Valley companies, basically laundered, and then they're going to launder more money from you, that $500 billion, to build stuff that they're going to test on you without any understanding of the dynamics. You will be the guinea pigs. There you go. So I call this talk mRNA technology, the swarm's arrogant reductionist quote unquote solution. So I hope you understand what that title is. And understand, we don't give talks here at Truth Freedom Health that are talking about just random shit. We like to educate you. So today you learn what is the history of the world of the gene and how we started doing genomic sequencing. You should understand what mRNA is. You've understood the history briefly about what is a vaccine, quote unquote, what is vaccination? What was the COVID, quote unquote, vaccine? And now what they're planning with the mRNA cancer vaccine for quote unquote personalized medicine. But it's reductionist. They know I've been talking about personalized medicine since 2020, 2019. Trump knows about it. All my stuff was given to him. So they are now trying to make this personalized to sound good, but it's not fucking personalized. It's reductionism because they're still using this central dogma theory. No idea feedback. Those of you who made it this far and have seen my videos and got here or interacted with people who got you here, recognize that we teach you system science. System science is about input and output. That's the dumb version. Then you get into an intelligence system, which has feedback. You see, Larry Ellison and Trump's model is all based on stupidity. It's based on an open system. Give this mRNA, output will be this. Well, what about the feedback mechanisms? Okay. And these feedback mechanisms are highly important. In fact, this paper just came out a couple of months ago. And it said, this is on the mRNA technology. It said, the assumption that there's no possibility of genomic integration of therapeutic synthetic mRNA, only one recent study has examined interactions between vaccine mRNA and the genome of transfected cells and reported that an endogenous retrotransposon is unsilenced following our mRNA entry into the cell, leading to reverse transcription of a full-length vaccine mRNA sequences. That's just one study. What does that mean? That means they have found that the mRNA reintegrates back into your DNA. Who the fuck is educating you on this? I am. Our movement is. So give credit where it's due to our movement. And why do I do this? Why does our movement do this? Because we have a very different model than reductionism. We believe in systems-based approaches. Systems-based approaches tell us that the world can change bottoms up by you wanting to save yourself, understanding this dynamic. That's why I start with Shatter the Swarm, how all of this works. And you can't learn this anywhere. Do you think those in power want to teach you how to overthrow them? No. We have created an institution like you would go to aeronautical engineering, like you would go study plumbing, or you would go study civil engineering. We're teaching the world how to do revolution engineering, not taking a gun and shooting people, but using your mind to understand how this entire system of power, profit, and control work. The same system science that rules your body is the same system science that does how farming works. You have a bunch of morons suddenly talking about permaculture, but you go through our course, you'll understand permaculture, you understand your body as a system, you'll understand all these systems. You have charlatans now taking pieces, growing on the griftosphere and manipulating people. But you come here, now you could spend 30 years trying to get into MIT and trying to learn this, and still you won't get this. We are creating a professional institution, a world-class institution, Truth, Freedom, Health, Systems Health, Clean Food Certified, that has never existed on this planet. With we, the people, serving and learning, we are creating our own professors, our own warrior scholars to educate us so we can get out of this fucking mess, or otherwise you will be depopulated. Who is fucking doing this? Nobody. We are. Doris Dabish, retired worker, was out living, working out of her car to get us on the ballot. Who the fuck else does that? Bill Grooms, in the midst of his health issues, went and got 1,500 signatures for us. Jill Jones, in the middle of having her child, went and got us on the ballot, even though it tried to cheat us, in California. So please don't come to this movement with wackadoodle fucking ideas and talking about other morons. If you want to come here to roll up your sleeves, help build a movement, welcome. But if you don't want to do that and you want to talk grift all day, please fucking get the fuck out. Because we're in a very, very important inflection point in human history. The elites have consolidated power as never before. There is no left. There's only one movement right now. It is a fascist movement, consolidating Zionism, technocracy, to create an Elysium for the elites. And who is leading people from below? I am. Our movement is. And they do not want people like me, people like us leading ourselves. So don't expect them to give us any fucking popularity. And don't try to be popular. I was reprimanding one of our leaders in training. We have a guy in our movement, nice guy. Quote, there's a lot of nice guys. Smokes weed all day, fucking does alcohol, can do some work, but he's not qualified to lead. And this guy shared with us what's going on. But then he says, oh, but he's a nice guy. We don't care about fucking nice guys. Our movement is training you to be street smart. We have to figure out who we build a movement around. Our people have the right values. Do they want to get disciplined? Do they want to follow the natural laws of system science? That's what we educate people. We are building a bottoms-up movement to shatter the swarm. The knowledge you got here today, you will not get anywhere else. Why? Because they don't want to educate you. They want to make you ignorant. They don't want to educate you to fight you. So after this video is done, you can understand it. I'm gone. You can understand it. And you can say, shit, I understand what the fuck's going on. That's what we do. So you get off your ass and you build a bottoms-up movement to fight them. So how can you use this knowledge to fight them? Well, first of all, you realize, wait a minute, all this technology was paid for by me, by hardworking people. Number two, they are making decisions not with one iota of your input. We've seen the integration of government and big corporations as never before. The fact that that devil Larry Ellison and the devil Trump and the devil Elon Musk and all these devils who are all bow down to Zionism are building this technocratic infrastructure is fascism. Don't tell me Elon Musk didn't do this just, his fucking Hitler salute. Oh, he's from apartheid South Africa. I wouldn't do it. He knew it would elicit a response. It was arrogance. It is a symbol of the fascism, and they're telling you they're fascist. We live in extraordinary times. We need to get serious. We live in an inflection point, and our movement is the only force against these forces, period. And the way we're going to win is, number one, get off your ass, go to Truth for Health and learn this shit. Contribute. If you have a lot of money, give us a lot of money, because we will help build our movement. If you don't have money, give us your time. 20 minutes a day. Contribute to yourself. Get involved in one of our solutions. Get on the ground. I just gave you a very deep conversation. We spent about an hour. You go try to get this anywhere, you're going to have to watch about 1,000 YouTube videos and try to piece it together. You won't get this kind of clarity. God gave me the gift to take very complex things and make it understandable to everyday people. And I enjoy doing that. Those people down the street over there at MIT Harvard make it very complicated, little nerds with their little nasally voices, with little twitches and smoking their pipes and whatever, right? They make it purposely complicated. I don't want to do that. I want to empower you guys to fight, because I hate these guys. And we need to shatter them. And we will do it if you want to save yourself. And you want to get disciplined. As you went into the sessions, discipline, focus, critical, following through, listening, having respect for people who actually have studied this shit, becoming a conscious incompetent. So our movement doesn't take shit from people who want to be undisciplined, who want to follow the stupidities of the swarm. We're building a serious movement. So I encourage you guys to get involved. If you've done the introductions, I hope people were introduced to people. Every Wednesdays, our leaders hold local meetings. We have a very methodical way we run those meetings, 30 minutes, because we know working people don't have time to fuck around and talk about nonsense. Get on the ground, 20 minutes a day. We must build this movement. You must want to build it for yourself. Don't do it for me. Don't do it for someone else. This movement is about you. My intention is to work with around 10 people each month. And I want to give my time to people who really want to learn, guys. And those people want to give time to people who want to learn and fight. So there you go. The mRNA technology is a swarm's arrogant, reductionist solution. It's still following the old model. There's nothing new there. Most of the AI, none of it's new, guys. All those algorithms have existed since 1960. They have faster processors now. Questions on this topic? And be very mindful before you ask a question. Part of the training is think about what the fuck you're asking. Ask it very clearly and succinctly. Asking a question takes as much time, if you do it well, to answer it, okay? So think about what you're asking. And Suresh, to the audience on social media, I'm going to go to the chat. If you have a particular question, I'll answer it, okay? Yeah, we know all this about Larry Ellison. Yep, he owns his own island. He spends weeks on vacation with Netanyahu. Yep, they're all Zionists, guys, every fucking single one of them. And by the way, if you notice what Trump recently said, he said, Gaza, beautiful property overlooking the ocean. You know, it looks like a demolition. Yeah, it was a demolition. It's a real estate game. They demolished all that property. That's what demo people do. So Jared Kushner and his Zionist scumbags can build multi-trillion-dollar property there. So let's take questions. Can someone, whoever's facilitating the meeting, can you guys select people one by one?
Yep. Jason Jeffries, I'm going to ask you to unmute to ask your question. Dr. Shiva, please.
Hi, Dr. Shiva. I was curious your thoughts on the COVID vaccine from Russia or China, because theirs was not mRNA, and maybe how they got it and just general thoughts on it.
Yeah, so the general thing is this, Jason. So think about, and you should go watch my videos on the immune system, but the immune system is a complex system. The old model of the immune system was when an antigen from whatever one of these sources came into your body, you had an initial response, which occurred in the first 20 minutes. And then a little bit later, your body elicited what's called the adaptive response, which created antibodies. So it's this 2-box model, Jason, which existed since 1915. What I uncovered in my PhD work is there's other systems like the interferon system, the virome, the microbiome, and I integrated that into a large scale, much more robust theory of the immune system. So when a vaccine, the notion of a vaccine is it has those antigens of the object, whatever it is, fungus, mold, et cetera, that you want to elicit an immune response to. So in the case of the Russian vaccine, and in fact, the Indian one, it was your traditional vaccine, meaning it had the dead antigens with some type of adjuvant to deliver it. And this is where some of the conversations come about on toxicity, because you have the material that will elicit the immune response, but is the material that you're adding to it, is that going to create toxicity? So that's what those vaccines were. The BioNTech, Pfizer, and the Moderna vaccine were the mRNA vaccines. So one was your traditional vaccine. One is really not a vaccine. It's really more biological engineering, genetic engineering. Henry, go ahead. Henry had a question. Jill, can you?
Thank you. Can you hear me now?
Yes. Hi, Henry. How are you?
I'm fine, sir. I would have to confess that it's a complicated topic that you've outlined to us, and it was difficult for me to follow all of it. But when you talk about how the mRNA could double back on itself, so to speak, back to the source cell, what is the thought or current thinking or current theories on what might happen if that occurs?
Yeah. So I you know what I'm going to do? So if you think about a piece of DNA, right? So Henry, you build construction, right? You've
Yes.
done. So think about what the DNA in your body is really the blueprints. Okay. Imagine it's a master warehouse of building whole developments. Okay. Some condo units here, some malls over here, right? Et cetera, right? So pieces of that DNA code for each of those things. They're the blueprints that are, so DNA is really storage mechanism, okay? Pieces of that DNA, when they leave the nucleus, are the mRNA sequences, which go to the ribosome, which is like the construction factory, and you're going to the developer and you say, here's my thing, make me a mall, okay? Does that make sense? So that's what mRNA is. When they inject this mRNA in, the question is, and this paper that I'll do a whole video on, shows that it can go back into the DNA. So go back into the nucleus. DNA opens up. That means that mRNA gets inserted into your DNA. So what does that mean?
That's my question.
Yeah. So there's a very, I don't know if you can see this. This is from this paper. There's a very interesting diagram here showing how the mRNA actually goes back into the nucleus. I'll do a special thing on this to go into more detail. But if it gets reintegrated into your DNA, it depends on where it gets integrated in, okay? Which part of the DNA. And based on where it gets integrated in, now you're altering your genomic sequence. And when that piece of DNA is reused elsewhere, or even that process can create at minimum affect inflammation and lead to your interferon system being turned on. That's what this, just one paper, one study was done on this. And we haven't done enough of this. Henry can elicit that. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's a great question. But the point is that imagine now having millions of people to test this on you and then say, oh, we did that. Oh, that caused this, that caused this, that caused this. Because the possibilities of doing this are astronomical. This is why you need computing to figure this out, what it can happen. One of the reasons for creating cytosol, okay, in the natural compound space. But yeah, so you see, and there's other mechanisms, because if you look at the DNA, as Gerald Fink said, this long piece of DNA, what we're talking about in these genes are only 5%. What is the other 95%? Let's say this integrates there. These could be regulatory RNAs that do other processes like cleaning up stuff, like cops, making sure police, making sure certain things are occurring. We don't know enough. Now, obviously, does that mean we should not do research? No, we should do that. But the issue is, who is making these decisions? Are we doing it transparently? And do we, the people, say, you know what? I do know the risks. Fine, I'm going to do it. I have a serious cancer. But our view as a movement is this should be made transparent. We should have more conversations like this. Next question.
All right. I'm
By
gonna
the way, I
call-
will do another video if you guys think. I'll do a drawing like I've done showing mRNA works, and I'll go through. This is the only piece of research which shows that the mRNA is going back in and being reinserted in. I'll do that to support this.
That would be excellent, Dr. Shiva.
Yeah.
I'm going to call on Peter Chester. Please keep your question brief for us. Please ask your question now. Thank you.
Thanks for the talk, Dr. Shiva. My question is, and it may be a speculative question, but is this whole program actually about finding answers to the efficacy of the mRNA approach for addressing disease, or is it something else? So, for example, is it about creating a digital database of the people who have had the vaccines, or, you know, manipulating or having the ability to manipulate their genetic makeup?
Yeah, so Peter, here's the issue, right? You're asking, again, these questions must be asked, right? Who owns the data? How's the data being stored, et cetera? These are fundamental questions that you would do in a truly democratic, open society. But we're not having those questions asked. We're not really having discussion. Maybe everything is absolutely fine and there's nothing to worry about, which is a possibility, right? So one is that you have the sequencing, since the sequencing of the genome, you have many, many different databases that have developed. I mean, you can go to 23andMe. The claim is that they're not sharing your data with someone, or Ancestry.com, you know, these different places where you can send your genome. So one is the issue of, is there real privacy? The other issue is, when you're getting these mRNA sequences, is it experimental to use a large body of people to understand how it works? Because obviously this technology is quite profound. You're playing with nature at a very fundamental level. It could have some very profound effects and it could have some very deadly effects. Or, to your point, is it being done, Peter, to tag us, knowing that these mRNA sequences are in fact being reinstantiated into your cellular DNA? And by the way, once it goes in, remember, every day 10 billion new cells are being created. So once you reinsert it in, after about, I think you can work out the numbers, I don't know if it's 7 weeks or 7 months or 7 years, whatever the number is, all your DNA is being, basically all your cells are new cells. So it's a good question. If in fact the mRNA is being reinserted and they've already done the calculations, is this a way of changing masses of people genetically? Good questions. And I think we should have open questions on it, open discourse on it. But you have to understand that most of the universities, MIT, Harvard, Yale, Stanford, they're funded by these same people, and there is not transparent science. It's not transparent. So this is why we need to build a movement. This is why people need to be educated and be able to answer these questions and ask these questions without getting lost in the griftosphere. If you notice, whenever we put out real stuff, like with the election fraud or this or that, the CIA and the manipulation is they take real stuff and they bring crazy charlatans in to talk wackadoodle shit about it. So we actually subsume the real nugget of truth there. So we as a movement also have to be watchful of that. But once you understand this dynamic, we have a chance of winning at that media game. Next question.
All right, I'm going to call on Richard Collin.
Hello, Dr. Shiva. I was wondering, so what does this have to do with the PCR test? Was that just a sham? And also if there's any way to get the MNRA out of you, anything to do with that. So
Yeah, so first of all, the PCR test, which was developed by a guy, I forget his name now. I actually spoke to him many years ago. He ended up winning the Nobel Prize. But he said the PCR test is not supposed to be used for diagnosis, because you use a PCR test and it amplifies stuff to such a level that you'll have more noise than actual signal. So the use of the PCR test for diagnosis was never supposed to be done. So that's just wrong what they did. And I think the second part of your question, what was the second part of your question? Joe, can you ask, or can you repeat the second part of this?
it was just if you got the MNRA vaccine, is there any way to get it out? Any
Yeah, so this is an interesting question, okay?
fasting, right?
But, well, if you just look at this, let's just look at it very simply. Your body is creating mRNA all day long, okay? It's taking the genome, it creates mRNA, your body's creating proteins to normal. But here you're taking a lipid particle, right, which is a fat globule. In the middle of it, you're inserting the blueprint, and trillions of these particles get injected into you. And these particles go into your cells. Then the lipid particle is supposed to dissipate, the mRNA comes out. It makes a couple of new foreign objects are being introduced into you. The fat globules, you can assume, okay, there's probably a high rate they dissipate. Let's give them that. The mRNA sequence is coming into your ribosome and it's creating this protein, whatever that is. Say cancer protein or the spike protein. Trillions of it, right? The question that everyone needs to really ask is, how much of that protein that's being created, this new protein that heretofore maybe existed in the form of the tumor, now you're putting it out there, and the mRNA sequence, how much of this is being degraded by natural cellular processes, being cleared, and how much of it being stored back into your nuclear material? These are questions that I frankly don't have the answers to. But we as a public now can ask these questions because of this conversation. You can go say, hey, we want to know what percentage of that mRNA blueprint is still hanging around in the cytoplasm, leaving the cytoplasm, maybe going to other cells it shouldn't even go to and getting reintegrated into their DNA. We want to know, has anyone done the in vitro, in vivo, or human studies on that? Tracking those mRNA with maybe some radionucleotides. Do we know that? How much of it gets integrated in to what Henry and I were just talking about? Mm-hmm. So given this conversation, you guys are a little bit more armed to have those conversations with people in a much more deliberate way. Not, there's a lot of stuff up there, graphene oxide and this, I saw this, and I think there's little 5G towers and all this shit. And maybe, but you see, you got to be careful with that conversation because you're going to get taken out to some wackadoodle shit. We have someone in our movement who was talking to Crystal saying, I think I have nanobots in me. I need to go clear it. Maybe, but why don't we ask actually the real questions so we can pin these guys up, which is, tell me the clearance rate of mRNA that you just injected in me. Tell me what percentage of that mRNA is being instantiated into my DNA. Tell me. Now you got them by the balls. Our movement needs to lead and ask these questions, because whenever we put out the real stuff, they have their CIA grifters who take our stuff and they go into wackadoodle ways, and you have very naive people I've seen in our own movement getting lost in that. Oh, I need to get nanobots out today in my body. I can't hand out cards. Crystal, are you here? I don't know if Crystal's here. She mentioned this to me. So whoever said that, for God's sake, if you need help understanding these mechanisms of action, I will do videos to educate you. But we have to get much smarter than them. When I did the election fraud stuff, you may remember, we get to the real issue. Trump and Mike Lindell talked about crazy shit and printed money using my stuff, but made it wackadoodle. Okay? This is why there's a deception within the deception. This knowledge I'm sharing here, I can tell you right now, some prick on the other side's listening to it, and they're trying to figure out how to, rebut it, putting garbage. This is why we must educate people, and that's why I'm doing this video, and we'll do more. Let's go to the next person, Jason Brooks. Oh, Jason asked a question. Let's go to someone new, and then we'll come back to Jason.
Marion, if you can please unmute.
Hi, Dr. Shiva. I was wondering about I was hearing so much about the blood clots that they were finding. What was your explanation of that, maybe with the protein?
Yeah, so I did a video on this, I think about 3 years ago. Many years ago, it's become, I'll bring this paper up. Let me see if I can bring this up. In fact, let me go to, so if you go to PubMed, okay, let me go to PubMed. I'll find this for you guys. Okay, so there's a very interesting piece of research that we did in conjunction with USC, the Zilka Neurological Institute. This is CytoSolve on them. And let me bring this up here. And Nature Neuroscience is one of the hardest journals to get published in. So here's a paper that I published back then. It's called Parasite of the Neurovascular Unit, Key Functions and Signaling Pathways, okay? And this paper goes into detail about a very interesting structure called pericytes, not parasites, pericytes, okay? There may be some better diagrams here. Okay, so if you can see this, if you look inside a microscope in your body, you have your arteries and your veins, and at the deepest level, all these arteries then eventually go to the connection between arteries and veins that go to your cells that feel the vasculature, which means blood supply, are finally these very fine capillaries. So here's a capillary, okay? I'm looking at a lateral view of it. So think about the capillary as a tube, okay? Now, the inside of the tube, from a construction perspective, like a tunnel, is composed of endothelial cells. They're like, the sheetrock, okay? But outside of the capillary are cells that go every so many micrometers. And those are these pink structures. You see these? And these are called pericytes. The function of the pericytes has not been fully understood until we did this paper. We used CytoSolve. My contribution was I gave a complete engineering way to look at CytoSolve. We built an entire systems architecture. We showed that the pericytes, dysfunction in the pericytes affect different molecular pathways, which leads to pretty much every disease. ALS, Alzheimer's, everything, okay? But these pericytes are interesting. So this was looking at the inside of the brain where you have fine capillaries. But guess what? You have capillaries in your heart, in your liver, everywhere. So these pericytes they're everywhere in your body. So if you have a little piece of your vasculature, there are these pericytes. What did the pericytes do? The pericytes control the flexibility of your capillaries, how hard they are, how permeable they are. Guess what happens? Spike proteins, guess where they go affect? They go land on the pericytes. Okay? Which means they can cause dysfunction to blood flow, affecting clotting factors. Does that make sense? I don't know if we lost Mary, but so given I did some of this fundamental research, in my view, these exogenous agents like the spike protein are affecting the pericytes, which lead to, for example, cardiovascular, I think it's called CVT, cardiovascular thrombosis, which is blood clotting. So because we took a systems approach, engineering approach, I can share that with you now and I can explain that. Pericytes are everywhere throughout the body. Spike protein effects, that's so getting back to this issue, when you're getting the mRNA vaccine, it's creating spike proteins. How much is it affecting that? The issue is we don't want to be saying, oh, it's good or bad. How much? We need to know the science. And by the way, the Oxford vaccine, which didn't use mRNA, one piece of data said that was actually creating more CVT than the mRNA vaccine. So what I'm trying to say is the problem is all this data should be made public, but the public needs to be intelligent enough so we can demand this data be made. And that's what we're trying to do here. But my view is that the protein affects the pericytes, which affects vasculature. Next question, Patrick.
Hi, Dr. Shiva. Thank you for explaining all about the mRNA. I just wanted to back up and talk about the financials. I know you're mentioning that this was going to cost roughly $500 billion.
Well, no, that's what they're investing in.
Is it public? I was just trying to get an understanding. Is this a mix of private and public funding, like i.e. U.S. dollars are going into it?
Yeah. Well, remember, where did SpaceX get all this funding? From your tax dollars.
Correct.
Okay? Most of these foundational technologies are coming from you. Okay. Now, when they announced this $500 billion to build these data centers, well, Larry Ellison claims he's putting in 100 million. Okay. Someone else is putting in 100 million. Well, where's the other 300 million coming in? Okay. You have to recognize that the way money is laundered through corporations, through government, through a whole bunch of means, through government funding, right? Defense Department funding occurs in innumerable amount of ways. So you can definitely assume a significant portion of this is coming from the public coffers, directly or indirectly. Okay.
Okay. Thank
The
you.
bigger financials to your question is this. The entire development of pharmaceutical drugs to date, since the last 100 years, has been through a very reductionist model, what we train people on in an open systems model, you know, a train going in one direction. The pharmaceutical model of development has been, you have some disease, it has some phenomenon, you put it into a test tube, you hit some compounds with it in a test tube, you see, wow, something's occurring. You take that compound, and that's what you call a synthetic pharmaceutical drug. You go patent it. So from the day you patent, you got 20 years. Then you go raise some money to go do more test tube testing. And if that shows promise, then you have to go raise the next round of funding to go kill, it's called in vivo testing, animal testing. And if that seems like you didn't kill a lot of animals, then you have to file an investigational new drug filing with the FDA. That takes around 3 years to get allowance. Once that's done, then you get to go to clinical trials, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. This process takes 13 years. After 13 years, if it makes it through this, and by the way, only 20% of the drugs even make it past phase 1, then you have the right to take it to market. But you only have 7 years left, because it took 13 years, $5 billion to develop that drug, which is, by the way, the average. You now have 7 years to monetize on it. This is why the cost of drugs is fundamentally high, because the development process is a very medieval process. Okay. So one of the economics to understand is pharmaceutical companies have about 60,000 drugs in their library. They have like a library, and they test these. Well, over the last 20 years, pharma company spends more and more and more money on R&D, and less new drugs are being even allowed by the FDA. They've sort of run out of their vault of drugs. So this is why Pfizer's revenue went from 60 billion in 2012, and it tanked down to, in 2019, you can look at it, 45 billion. They lost 20 billion in top line revenue. This is why they needed something new, mRNA vaccine platform. And that's what this is about. So Pfizer's revenue went from 45 billion in 1 year to 110 billion. You can look it up, and it's probably higher than that. And that's just one company. So the big financials are their model of drug development has failed. Why? Because the entire model is based on there is a problem here, and I'm going to hit it with a magic bullet, and it'll release a set of reactions, and I'm done. Forget about the adverse reactions. Cytosolve and the approach that I take comes from systems biology, which says, wait a minute, you have to understand all the complexity. And combination therapies of hitting multiple compounds, food is a combination therapy. Food is medicine. This is why food is, in fact, medicine. And if we can find natural compounds from nature, which we've epigenetically grown up with, and understand their reactions, we have a much better shot of ameliorating those side effects and still eliciting the positive effects. Systems paradigm, reductionist paradigm. This is what we're fundamentally talking about. Our movement is a systems-based paradigm, politically, scientifically, and health-wise. The swarm takes a reductionist paradigm. And so for every quote unquote solution they create a new problem. Reductionism always leads to the next reductionist solution. Quote unquote solution. Okay, Carl Sedgwick, and then we'll, it's almost 11. Go ahead, Carl. Can someone unmute Carl, please? Can someone unmute Carl?
Yep. Yes,
Go,
can you hear me?
Yes, Carl, go ahead.
So does this great knowledge that you imparted with us today, does it sort of pump the brakes on all this positive talk lately about gene therapy, which could include gene replacement or gene editing?
Well, Carl, my point in sharing this talk is to give you guys a very cogent, and we can do it again to clarify, there's a lot of stuff I covered. This was like a 13-week semester course in systems biology. I went through pretty quickly. I did it in broad strokes, but to give you an understanding that these technologies are dealing with very complex systems. We're not talking about building a space shuttle engine, which is complex. We're talking about the human body, which is evolved over billions of years, if you believe in natural design or creator design, whatever you want to believe in. Very complex system. So if you're going to go perturb, tweak something here, you better have an effect what it's going to go do here. At least understand the system's processes. And at least make sure that the patient who's getting this can ask cogent questions. And that's the goal here. Gene therapy, sure. AI, sure. Maybe these technologies, but who's owning them? Who's controlling them? And as these technologies get more and more and more sophisticated, less and less and less people are actually understanding what they're actually doing. And this is a sort of an unfortunate conundrum of the bourgeois democracy we live in. It's not really democracy. So finite set of people are making decisions on the NIH, where the dollars go. Finite set of people have immense dollars to deploy these technologies. Our movement saying what we're doing here is a very deep discussion that should be had much more globally. So it's not any of these technologies are bad or good. The issue is who's controlling them, and do we have transparent discussions on how it should be deployed? And are we as a public answering questions, and are we getting answers that let us really know what the risks are? So each one of you can do your own risk assessment. That's what we're talking about. Jill, go ahead.
So my question is, how does this affect the safety of blood transfusions where it's already found to have some, rates of rejection and secondary complications from the transfusion of a healthy blood? How does that mRNA affect blood transfusions and I guess also organ donation? What are the effects there? I mean, this is another question, I think, a risk assessment question, right?
Yeah, so in 2019, Jill, we held the first vaccine and immune system health risk assessment conference. About 2,000 people showed up. 600 in our building here was packed. and a bunch online, and we ask these questions. The reality is these risk assessment studies are not really being done, okay? And the reason is the tools to do those risk assessment studies. So you're taking a reductionist approach, and you're having reductionist risk assessment studies when you're dealing with complex systems. Like when you do genetic engineering of soy with, like, for example, with GMOs, you're twiddling something here, and what is it going to have over here, okay? So if you're taking a reductionist solution to affecting a complex system, you should recognize it's a complex system and have complex systems solutions to even understand risk assessment. You follow?
Yeah.
Does that make sense? So this is why, for example, our clean food certification is not just, is the food organic? We're looking at it from a systems perspective. Where did the food originate? What's the safety profile, right? Bioavailable. We're looking at a multi-dimensional way. So we're really taking off our blindfold like those blind men saying, oh, I'm looking at a fucking elephant, right? I'm not looking at the trunk. So you need to be, right now they're wearing blindfolders and they're approaching a solution. It is very easy to do that for them because you don't have to deal with the complexity, which doesn't let you get a product out to market quickly, okay? So the realities, we don't know. But we can know. Doesn't mean this is all unknowable. If we start asking questions and we say, hey, what's in the blood, right? Has there been any study where someone has been given the mRNA vaccine and over time have people looked at their blood and done a blood analysis to see how much amount of spike protein? Does anyone know if there's a study out there? I don't know. And the question comes down, Jill, in science is how much, and how much dosage do you need? These are important things, right? Yes, yes, there are CO2 gases in the atmosphere, but how much increases temperature? That's a very complex question. The carbon tax people want to tell you, oh my God, they want to talk about a nightmare. But the reality is it's very complex and you don't know. And moreover, they forget the robust nature of clouds, which can, control that. So the body too is resilient. It doesn't mean you can't take these interventions and everyone's going to die. The body has a certain amount of resilience. The issue is we should understand what those are. We have the tools to do that, but we should understand what they are.
Thank you, Dr. Shiva. I think
Yeah.
it's powerful, the tools you've given us to have a systems understanding. So thank you.
Yes. So I think what I want all of you as graduates, people, students, teachers in our movement to understand, we are not looking at this some wackadoodle way. We're looking at this in a very intelligent way from a systems perspective. So we'll ask the right questions. And if we do that, we'll be able to really educate and help people rather than getting caught in some wackadoodle areas where you'll be shot down. And that's what the establishment wants to do. They want to shoot down legitimate ideas using illegitimate ideas, mimicking as legitimate ideas. So let's take the last question from Anya Z. Anya, you're in Massachusetts, huh?
Yes, I am. I'm in Massachusetts, Dr. Shiva. I got a question about cancer because of a professor at Boston College, Dr. Thomas Seyfried. He says that cancer is a metabolic disease, not a genetic disease. And from what you've described here tonight, it sounds like they're going to still go down the wrong road if they're going to approach cancer, the treatment or cure of cancer from a genetic perspective instead of a metabolic one. That's my question.
Yeah. So Anya, so the reality is there's some really, what's really interesting is the understanding of cancer, believe it or not, some of the mechanisms of action are very similar to infection from parasites. It's fascinating.
Yes.
They're almost parallel. Okay.
Yes.
But this is why they're finding many of the antiparasitics have profound effects, even on late-stage cancer, on reversing it. Fenbendazole is one of them, and many of the leading universities have done this, and they don't fully understand it because the mechanisms of action are very similar. So that's one point. The other point is when they're talking about these cancer vaccines, what they're talking about is not metabolic disease or non-metabolic disease.
I see.
What they're talking about is to destroy the cancer cell by having your immune system go attack the cancer cell. Okay? That's why
Okay.
they're calling it a cancer quote unquote vaccine. So they want your immune system to see this cancer cell as a virus, as a bacteria, okay, and to go attack it. You got
Okay.
it?
Yeah.
So that's called getting your T cells, which have killer T cells, to go attack it. Your immune system doesn't attack something unless it's primed for it by the dendritic cells,
I
which
see.
present to it an antigen saying, hey, T cells, this guy's an invader.
It recognizes it as an enemy.
Yes. So they're giving the mRNA to create the antigen at the dendritic cells, which brings it over to the T cell, says, hey, this thing, this antigen here is our enemy. It just so happens to be over here in this tumor. So your T cells track that tumor and go kill it. So their goal is to kill the tumor cell. Okay, it's not. They're not even talking about whether it's metabolic or this parasite. They don't care. That goal is to go kill the go kill that tumor. Okay, like using chemotherapy agents. Okay, it's a tracking mechanism. I'll give you another example that they've done many years ago to go. If you have cancer developing in your body, a tumor starts. That's the first part of it. But tumors do something very interesting. I'm going to give you a big term. It's called angiogenesis. And so the tumor starts, it's like a military army. It starts a bunch of army guys. Then they start laying down supply chains to go so this tumor can go somewhere else. And that's called laying down bloodlines, blood flow. Okay. All those tumor bloodlines are called the process of angiogenesis. And there's a very specific protein that they've discovered called VEGF, VEGF. So if you know VEGF is in your bloodstream, that means the tumor is starting to metastasize, okay? So tumor's here, so it starts laying down this vasculature, blood flow. So another strategy for killing cancer is, this is a biological engineering strategy, is that you take a big sphere and another sphere inside that sphere, like a bubble in a bubble. In the inner bubble, which is a lipid particle, you put in the chemotherapy agent, okay? And in the outer bubble, you put in the agent to destroy the vasculature. So you inject this, and by the way, the surface of those nanoparticles have particular receptors that can go to that particular tumor. And so the vasculature takes in these particles. As it dissipates, the outer agent destroys the vasculature. It travels to the tumor, and the inner agent destroys the chemotherapy agent. So these are biological engineering techniques. People are looking at engineering approaches to affecting disease, like genetic engineering, okay? So think about this as a different realm of attacking disease. Very different than natural approaches, okay? But that's where we're in a world now that we can start manipulating things in our body. So that's what we're talking about. People are talking about creating small little nano robots that you will inject that will go break up plaque in your arteries, like little construction guys. You know, small little guys. Okay, that'll go do this. Fascinating stuff. The issue is, who owns these technologies? How are they being developed? And what's the safety? And do you, as a consumer of this, fully understand what it is and are getting the education to do this? This is why we started Systems Health education. We're in a very different world now, systems health education. And this should be taught. There should be whole bodies of knowledge based on this. No one else is going to do it, so we're spearheading it. So everything we're doing, guys, is going to be as big or bigger than MIT, Harvard, Stanford, all these institutions combined, the curricula. It's a different model. I'll give you this example as I close. In 1993, I met with J.C. Penney, one of the biggest catalog companies in the world. I said, hey, you guys should get into the internet. It's going to be $1 trillion industry. Build a website. And we also told them, look, why don't you add an email address? You may want to do email marketing. Remember, J.C. Penney owned huge facilities everywhere. They had a catalog. They could have been the Amazon. They said, no, we don't want to do that. This internet's not going to go anywhere. Amazon came and ate their lunch. Sometimes the inertia of existing infrastructures don't know how to change course. The existing swarm is on its reductionist timeline. That's where they are. So very much like a new company, we're creating a whole different world, guys, over here. And it's based on a completely different approach. As different as Jeff Bezos saying, oh, on a computer, I'm going to create a catalog, and he destroyed J.C. Penney. It's paradigm changing. The big paradigms never want to change because they're making so much fucking money off of this. Culturally, it's anyone you talk to is an entrepreneur. That's why entrepreneurs come out of nowhere, and we destroy big guys because they're in their old world. And what I'm saying is, from an entrepreneurial perspective, we are creating systems-based education. They don't want to do that. In fact, at MIT, they try to create the engineering systems division. MIT has individual departments. One of my close friends was the head of that division. All the other division heads got together against that division and destroyed it because they were going to remove, because they were thinking that this new division would take money away from them because it was going to take a systems approach to engineering. So you have to understand that in many ways, they're going to destroy themselves because they are so big. They can't move fast enough. You guys understand what I'm saying? The way that they make money and everything has been monetized on a reductionist model. For them to give all that up, they're going to lose a lot of short-term revenue. They can't move fast enough. So we're building a systems-based paradigm here that for them to move in our direction means they have to implode. So the Clean Food Certified, the Systems Health Education, our leadership program is being built bottoms up. And the nature of it is it can only be built bottoms up. Everything they've done has served to some extent a certain phase of our development well, but no longer. It's going to eat itself up. So what we're doing is very revolutionary, but it's very real and practical and what needs to happen. So we are going to win. The issue is when and how fast we will win will be dependent on you. All right, everyone, there you go. It's 11:11. I got to get up at 5 a.m. and teach 9 hours tomorrow in systems health. I hope all of you guys get involved in that. We just launched. Just to end, we have, so if you're new, welcome. Start with Shatter the Swarm, become a truth-driven health warrior, connect with your local communities, and get on the ground and educate people to lead them back to Shatter the Swarm. And we have our entire leadership program there. But now in 2025, we're deploying our solutions. Cytosolve, we're creating our own new medicines, getting it out there to everyday people. And all of you can be part of that. Think about what we have. We don't need to build 10 million square feet of laboratory space in Cambridge. We have Cytosolve. We can build our own medicines. You guys can be participants in that. And we can get it out through you guys. Total parallel system over here. We have Clean Food Certified to understand where our food comes. You guys can become clean food consultants, help local neighborhoods. We were just on the phone with a woman who's I think Marianne, you met her. Haiti, she's a PhD in forest science. She's going to be involved in our advisory board. She's going to help people in Arizona get Clean Food Certified. Okay? We're going to go for it, guys. We don't need to wait for them. They're like old and decrepit. They're like J.C. Penney. The current government, Donald Trump, is fucking J.C. Penney. We're completely different paradigm. Think about it that way. Systems health education. Health education is going to be a $280 billion industry. This year alone, $7 billion industry. So if you guys want to like make money and build your own businesses, go to this paradigm. We've created Systems Health. It's a paradigm for you to be a health educator, but from a systems perspective, helping your communities, learning what's right for them to eat, what's the right way for them, which exercise is right. We've created an entire program. And I'll just end with that. And every other Fridays, we do a Systems Health tutorial. We just launched the new website. I'm pretty excited by this. Let me show it to you guys. But this is one of our other platforms. You see, we've been working very hard to develop all these platforms. So here's Systems Health. And as you can say, it says the foundation of 21st century health education, engineering system science, software applications for personalized health, and entrepreneurial business mentorship. Some of you are in this. Marianne Berry just went through this. She came from Arizona. She's learning engineering systems science. She's learning the software applications. And now we've built our own institution. And guess what? The other institutions I've taught at. But they were moving too slow. So we have our entire master certification program. We have our apprenticeship program, but we are going to create our own army and go head on head with them, but we're going to do it better than them. We've already have graduates who've gone through this. So tomorrow I'm going to teach systems anatomy. You want to learn anatomy? You went to medical school? I will teach you anatomy in a completely different way from an engineering process. Saturday, it's your body, your system, and your business, your system. And then we have self-paced courses and we have laboratories. So we've launched this. We relaunched this. I used to teach this before I got into all the political stuff. But now it's all come together. But the master's certification program, it'll teach you guys, it's a whole program, 3 self-paced courses, 3 live courses, and laboratories. Anyway, and all of you guys can be professors in this, educators in this. And now with the speed of the delivery systems, we have our own data centers. We can go direct. So it's very, very exciting. So do not get involved in any of this grifter whining and moaning. They're so strong, blah, 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 blah. We can't do anything. It's all bullshit. We are doing something. We're doing such immense things. They have to steal our material. Trump has to steal our fucking material. They have to get Booby Kennedy to literally mimic our stuff. But because we have our political movement, we go hit them, we explode them, and others are learning. It's just a matter of time, guys. The sooner you guys get your shit together and get involved, we can accelerate this. But that's really up to you. And I was speaking to Lynn Hurdley in the United Kingdom. Lynn gets out there in the cold by herself and goes hands out cards. And Lynn says, I talked to this person. I said, Lynn, this is not about them. It's about you. Right, Lynn? It's about you learning the material. It's about you learning how to articulate it, you becoming a wise person in your area. It's about each one of you raising your consciousness and learning these tools. It's like you guys become the professors, the gurus, and people will come to you. It's just a matter of time. This knowledge is not available anywhere else in a manner that it's accessible to everyday people. We have an unfair competitive advantage, as a professor of mine at MIT said. When you have an unfair competitive advantage, we're going to destroy them. It's just a matter of time because they are on the way to destroying themselves. They're on a reductionist paradigm. If they went to our paradigm, they'd have to blow up everything they're doing. I keep repeating this, and they can't do that. Think about JCPenney. Think about Amazon. So be excited. Do not be demoralized, disabled, and dumb. Get excited. Meet with your local leaders. Get involved. Share these videos. Invite people to the orientation. 20 minutes a day. Okay? Meet locally once a month. In Cambridge, by the way, Anya, if you're here, we hope to see you once a month here. We have tea, coffee, we get together. We talk. It's really nice meeting people face to face, build local communities. No one is coming to save us, guys. All right. Thank you, everyone. And Jill, share with them systemshelp.com/tutorial. Get involved. By the way, I've had to do this because we did research on our programs. We're going to present them to you what they're actually worth, the prices, and then we're going to give scholarships. And then we've just launched a serve and learn program. If you get involved and you do service, you get further scholarships. So we want to really say, hey, look, this is what it's worth. We're giving scholarships for being a Warrior Scholar. And then if you support yourself by supporting us, a reciprocal ecosystem, we all win. And so we're pleased to launch the serve and learn model for everyone to participate in. All right, everyone, thank you very much for your time, and best to you and your families. And thanks to all of you who've helped us get this far and have done immense work in your communities. We had our leadership meeting 2 weekends ago with about 78 leaders on there. And people looked around we did it in Zoom, and we're just, oh my God, look at all these people, hardworking people. So be very proud of what we're building here. There's nothing like this. Get involved and help grow this movement. Thank you, everyone. Be the light.
Shiva, the link is in the
If you guys could finish up with the anthem video and the features video, okay?
Yes, we'll go to that. Thank you, Dr.
Thank you,
Shiva.
guys. Bye-bye. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Well, tonight's lecture
We have
was,
allowed
very
our
good.
country
This was
to be taken over from within, and the end goal is you will have a homogenized world where we will become slaves, because there is a condition among the elites that really thinks they're better than you, deep down inside them, that you don't deserve the freedoms you have. They don't. This reality is what people need to wake up to, and we need to all unite working people. There's only one movement that can do that, and that is the movement that we started creating here in Massachusetts, the Movement for Truth, Freedom, and Health. Look, I've been a student of politics since I was a 4-year-old kid, studying revolutionary movements, left wing, right wing. There's a physics, there's a nuclear science to destroying the establishment. To build a bridge, you need to understand Newton's equation. You need to understand the laws of gravity. You need to understand Poisson's ratio. There is a way to build a revolution. And that's why I put this together. My goal is to train an army of truth, freedom, and health leaders. We don't need followers like social media. We need leaders, but they need training because the educational system does not teach them history, nothing. So in 3 hours, that's what I've started doing. That's the solution. We got to train people. First, with understanding what a system is, the dynamics of all systems that affect nature. The second is understanding the interconnection between truth, freedom, and health. Freedom is the ability to move freely, communicate freely, talk freely. Without freedom, you cannot convert ideas, hypothesis into truth, which is science. And without freedom, you can't really get to truth. And without truth, you make up fake problems and fake solutions, which means you destroy our health. And without health, which is the infrastructure of us and our body, you can't fight for freedom. Truth, freedom, health. Third concept is it has to be bottoms up. Working people, people who work uniting. And what the right wing has done is whenever you say working people unite, that must be communist. Meanwhile, they've let the Democrats run unions, which suppress workers, completely corrupt. But when you look at the arc of American history, it's been when working people came up. We need to go local. Every solution I'm coming up with as a part of this movement, we're giving the science, which is the truth, and then we tell people what they can do on the ground. Like with election fraud, you don't need to wait for some lawyer. Our goal is to train people to go local, to go local, to go local, fight locally. Forget lawyers, forget politicians, forget celebrities. You got to learn politics, and there is a science to it. They lock us down, we should be ready to shut them down. And the fourth part of this principle is the not so obvious establishment. So when you look at a system, there's always something that disturbs you from getting to your goal. Well, the biggest disturbance is the not so obvious establishment, which are those people who claim they're for you, on the left and the right. The Al Sharptons who tell black people I'm for you. The Tucker Carlsons. Do you think any true anti-establishment person will ever be on Fox or CNN? I don't think so. They both mislead working people back into the establishment. Without this solid understanding of political physics and theory, you're screwed. You're going to follow on the left wing, Bernie Sanders. Oh, he said something. Or Robert Kennedy. Scumbags. Or you're going to follow some right-wing talk show host. They're not going to lead us to liberation. It's us. We're building a bottoms-up movement, and that political physics, it's a nuclear science of change. Bottoms up. We have to organize to understand that there is people who talk a good game and then look at what they actually do, left and right. I'm sorry, Sean Hannity may say some good things, but I don't see the urgency in his voice to get something done. And it can only come when you weaponize yourself with the right knowledge. You need to be able to identify a rat. You know, Christ didn't go after the Romans, right? It was the Pharisees and the Sadducees who screwed him up. His own quote unquote people. And that's where we're at. So these 4 concepts I've built into a curriculum where people can go to truthfreedomhealth.com, and it's an educational program. We need to train people in political theory. You need to have physics, and I've created that curriculum. People need to get educated. We need to get educated fast. And within a half an hour, I can teach people. 2 years of MIT control systems, I teach people those concepts. Then I apply it, anyone can understand it. And then you say, oh, I got to build a bottoms-up movement. They have to get politically astute, and then they have to go locally and act, not sit there on social media. They have to act locally, defy locally, do civil obedience locally, but with knowledge on how to build a movement. Now, the Senate campaign's expanded to the Movement for Truth, Freedom, and Health, and they can find it on truthfreedomhealth.com, so people can sign in, they can get access to a bunch of videos. If they want to take a course and become a Truth, Freedom, Health leader, I offer a full scholarship there, but we want people to make a commitment that they'll study, that they'll get certified, that they'll go do activities on the ground. So go to truthfreedomhealth.com.
Welcome to VA Shiva. VA Shiva is a product of my journey across East and West, science and tradition, ancient and modern, that brings you the science of systems so you can become a force for truth, freedom, health. VA Shiva is a platform of revolutionary education, community building, and weaponry for unleashing local activism. My journey to VA Shiva begins in the chaos of Bombay, where I experienced diverse religions, languages, castes, and in a small village that had no running water, no electricity, where my grandmother, a poor village farmer, practiced Siddha, an ancient system of Indian medicine over 10,000 years old. She observed one's face, the art of Samudrika Lakshanam, to understand a body's unique constitution, allowing her to deliver the right medicine for the right person at the right time. Watching my grandmother heal others, I was inspired to study medicine, but I was also aware of the corrupt caste system of India, which denigrated a human being, where my family were considered low caste untouchables, where one's birth determined one's destiny. The grit and determination of my mother and father led them to get educated and to come to America, a 1 in a trillion event. Their actions inspired me to work hard and excel. While in 9th grade, I attended New York University in a computer science program, and subsequently, at the age of 14, was given a full-time job as a research fellow at what is now known as Rutgers Medical School in the heart of Newark, New Jersey. There I investigated the system of sleep using mathematics, computer science, and biology for sudden infant death syndrome. It was there in Newark where I invented email, when I was the first to convert every feature of the physical, paper-based inter-office mail system, including inbox, outbox, memo, carbon copy, blind carbon copy, attachments, into its electronic equivalent, a system which I named email, a term that I was the first to coin. On August 30th, 1982, I was awarded the first U.S. copyright for the invention of this system, recognizing me as the inventor of email. At that time, copyright was the only way to protect software inventions. I went on to MIT, where I earned 4 degrees across multiple systems of engineering: electrical, mechanical, design, biological. That training led me to invent many other systems for advancing humankind. EchoMail, the world's first intelligent email management system. Cytosolve, a computational biology system for eliminating animal testing to discover new medicines faster, cheaper, and safer. And to the creation of a whole systems methodology for certifying clean food. These innovations led me back on a Fulbright to India, where I discovered the missing link between Eastern medicine
and Western systems theory, honoring my grandmother, to develop Your Body, Your System, a powerful tool that will help you understand how your body is a system and how the inputs of food, supplements, and exercise bring your body back to its natural system state. And Systems Health, an integrative educational discipline that is now integrated into the VA Shiva platform that will enable you to learn the science of systems, the science of everything, be it your body as a system or our society and politics as a system, to reveal the foundational interrelationships between truth, freedom, health. Now is the time for you to be the light, learn the science of systems, build community, and weaponize yourself to unleash the activism necessary to deliver truth, freedom, health in your local community. Welcome to VA Shiva.